Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show, everyone, on a wonderful Wednesday. My name is Nick Reed. We are on, YouTube. That's where we are. You can watch us live there, Springfield's Talk 1041. Also, of course, you can listen to us streaming on the app and on the old radio, should you choose any of the show you missed. Podcast versions all over the place, KSGF.com, Spotify, iTunes. Friday, we do have a Heroes Breakfast, so if you're a veteran, love for you to come by and have breakfast with us. That is thanks to, it's free for you because of the Warrior's Journey, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, and, of course, the totally awesome people at Scramblers. The white liberals of New York, this guy that they have, by all appearances, Cuomo has conceded. Not sure how closely you have followed this, but this, I believe, is going to really have some national implications. And the Democrat establishment is very concerned about this guy that the day after 9/11, he's not an American, or he wasn't born in America. He's from Uganda. He's, Muslim, which by itself, you're like, okay, but given after 9/11, he's like, well, it's kind of America's fault. Refuses to acknowledge that the Jewish people of Israel have the right to exist. I mean, I'm sorry, if I'm a Jewish person living in New York City, I'm out of there. I am out of there. Let's see. When a mayor, he'll probably get in the general election. Let's address that. He'll probably win because current Mayor Eric Adams is running as an independent. And then you've got Siwa, I forget it. He's pretty well known. I think he even had a radio show for a period of time in New York, kind of a conservative activist. Not expected to win. But what's going to happen is that's going to be an advantage to the self-proclaimed socialist that has won the Democrat nomination, because the non-crazies are going to have their vote split between Eric Adams and the, quote, conservative candidate. And so everyone else is going to go to this nut job who has called for government running. There's some of the stuff that he said. He's going to have government run grocery stores, among other things. And we'll hit on a sort of put these things in an order, but as we open the show, just to give you an idea if you haven't followed this guy, Mamdani, Ocasio-Cortez, of course, she's anti-Semitic, so she was one of the loudest and proudest to endorse him. The anti-Semitism that has already been a problem in New York City, do we think this is going to hurt or help? A guy, mayor, who will not declare Jews have the right to exist in Israel. I wonder what that's going to do to the cultural environment in New York City. How far New York has come from, never forget, September 11th, 2001, to electing a guy whose attitude has been America had it coming. As mayor of New York. Now, again, I say that there's going to be a general election, but the only wild card in here is if Democrats very high, but I don't even know if that's going to work right now. The Democrat establishment was concerned that this guy was going to win. New York Times, among others, very left-wing, obviously, but have openly written editorials telling people don't elect this guy. And it isn't that they're so concerned with New York. If they were, they would not continue to be lefties. New York City. But it's because they are afraid that this is going to be another example to the American people at what psychopaths have infiltrated the Democrat Party. And who's running the Democrat Party now? While they recognize they're out of step with the average American as a political party, They don't really, they're having, of course, this identity crisis. But here you've got America's City, New York, and it's going to have a mayor, which we all know is going to be a disaster. I mean, he's going to make de Blasio, who, by the way, the total train wreck that was de Blasio, is, according to Mamdani, the best mayor that New York has ever had. I mean, he's going to one-up him. So we all know it's going to be just an absolute unmitigated disaster, without question. And on one hand, it's like, go ahead, destroy it. Just destroy it. You'll see. The problem is these people never learn. These idiots. And apparently it looks as if it's white liberals that were the problem. Cuomo, who, was booted out of office previously because, Me Too, which clearly, I mean, Democrats are so past the Me Too concern that Cuomo, up until recently, was leading in the polls. But also, he had the whole nursing home thing with untold number of elderly people being killed as he was cramming them with COVID patients. You just look at this. It's a pretty astounding. We've got to get not just traffic, but we got news coming up here, and I want to kind of break some of this down and what it means. But like again, you just, on one hand, you're like, go ahead, destroy the place, but they don't learn. They don't learn. You wish there'd at least be a little bit of satisfaction and people on the left going, golly gee, yeah, this is a mistake. But they keep doubling down. They're like, hand us another. Hand us one worse than the last. We're going to select that guy. Now, there is also thrown into this the train wreck known as ranked choice voting, which it appears as if perhaps that's the whole reason that he ended up. If it weren't for that, Cuomo could very well have won. And I suspect if that is the case, once all of the votes get counted, then there'll be a lot of discussion about that. So anyway, we'll see. And the latest with this leak that was reported, which, apparently in an effort to sabotage, I don't know, at the very least, this sense of victory regarding the bombing of the nuclear facilities and the massive amount of pushback from the Trump administration and experts. CNN, some, low-level anonymous source from the intelligence community apparently claim that they knew, that they had access to information, and it was all just one big lie, that this wasn't a successful bombing. And as you can imagine, the Trump administration has pushed back on that. Not just that, but the fact that CNN and MSNBC have been out there reporting it. All that coming up right now. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 100. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 91, and looking at a Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 88.
I believe there's going to be a tremendous amount of discussion, more than usual, about this primary in New York in which Cuomo has conceded to the far-left, anti-Semitic, Ugandese-born candidates, 35 years old, to win the Democrat nomination. And it looks like, just demographically speaking, interestingly enough, that Cuomo got the minority vote and that it was white liberals that threw their support behind the anti-Semitic Mamdani. And we've talked about this before. I mean, people on the left are problematic generally, just, in terms of the way they vote, the things they believe, and how it affects the average person. But white liberals are just insufferable. They're the worst. They're the absolute worst. They will put the absolute worst people in charge. I mean, it's anecdotal, but it's just perfectly symbolic. And there was, some social media guy, young guy, and he's talking to voters, Democrat voters ahead of time. It's some white liberal girl. They're the absolute worst. I think they're worse than white liberal men. And asking, well, she's like, oh, I like Mamdani. Why? Well, I mean, nothing of substance at all. He's just new and fresh, and, he's not part of the establishment, and I mean, it's just all fluff, nothing. It's just fun and exciting. And so she was asked, now he's, a socialist. He campaigns of being a socialist. Do you think socialism will work for New York? She's like, no. Okay. All right. 35-year-old state assembly member from Queens, originally from Uganda, topped in terms of votes, the former 3-term governor and 9 other candidates in a crowded primary field in an election that was determined by ranked choice voting, which is just put a drill in my head, this ranked choice voting thing. The way that it's sold is, well, this is great because if you don't get your first choice, you can get your second choice. But that's never really how it plays out. Because this was the plan of attack. That wasn't a secret. The Mamdani coordinated with one of the other candidates named Lander that wasn't expected to win, but another left-winger. Lander's the one who I believe showed up and got arrested. One of these that got arrested, tried to get attention because he wasn't doing very well in the polls. And not the Democrat who cried on the floor of the House, but this was a different guy. And so the way ranked choice voting goes is, let's say you go and you have there's 5 different, well, in this instance, 9 or 10 candidates. And you vote, who do you want to be the nominee? So you put it. Then you're encouraged, well, if that person doesn't win, then who would you like after that? And if that person doesn't win, who would you like after that? And if that person doesn't win, who would you like after that? All the way down. So you pick, if you got 9 different candidates, you pick 1 through 9. Then what occurs is if nobody comes out the winner, then the bottom person will drop off. And then whomever, all of those ballots, so they'll take all of the ballots from the person who dropped off. And then they look at, okay, who was the second choice on all of these ballots? And then they distribute those. And so with the ranked choice voting style, Mamdani and Lander campaigned together in the weeks leading up to the primary. So in other words, hey, if you're voting for Lander, then put Mamdani next. And the idea being that if, Lander, who, Mamdani is very, very close. In the recent polling, he was up 1 over Cuomo. And so the idea is that Lander would be one of the first to drop off. And then all of his voters, this was the plan, is that they would put Mamdani second. And Landers would essentially be delivering his votes to Mamdani. Now, whether or not that plan will be what made the difference, that will tell. The ranked choice part of the voting doesn't start until July 1st because, of course, it's a Democrat-run city, so counting votes has to take much, 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 much longer than is actually necessary. The socialist candidate was backed, of course, by Ocasio-Cortez. Introducing him last night was Attorney General Letitia James, who, of course, campaigned on going after Donald Trump and is now under investigation for falsifying documents in order to get good deals on loans and so forth. Mamdani, for his part, says that New York City's future is a place, quote, where the mayor will use their power to reject Donald Trump's fascism, to stop mass ICE agents from deporting our neighbors, and to govern our city as a model for the Democrat Party. Now, this is what has the Democrat Party very concerned. This is why you had the New York Times writing an editorial saying, do not support this guy as a Democrat. Because he is going to be another example for Republicans to point to. This is what happens when you put Democrats in charge. This is the insanity that has become the Democrat Party. And while the Democrat Party, we've talked about this battle before, you have these two very distinct sections of the Democrat Party. There is the old guard, if you will, that recognizes, okay, we're not really connecting with people any longer, so we need to figure out how to better do that. And then the other, which is, no, the people are wrong. We just need to bash them into submission. And that's the Mamdani wing of the Democrat Party. And this is another win for the extreme leftist. And you throw in there his anti-Semitism. I mean, the guy has been openly supportive of global intifada. America had 9/11 coming. He refuses to say that Israel and the Jewish people of Israel even have a right to exist. Refuses to acknowledge that. And this is yet another example for Republicans to point to the extremism within the Democrat Party. The question at this point is he going to be more damaging to the Democrat brand or more damaging to New York City? But I tell you what, if I'm a Jewish person in New York City, I would really, really, really think about getting the heck out of there. Without question. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Ozarks elder law is perhaps no better sort of recognition of how damaging government can be than to look at what is going to be happening to New York. I mean, any Democrat-run city, but now you've got this far-left socialist Democrat that won the primary there, and barring any just, I guess there are a number of pathways in which someone else can win in the general. We're going to see government at work, how poorly they do things, and how the consumer or the citizen always ends up last. Always. And that's what happens when it comes to, if you're thinking that you're going to be leaving things behind for your family, be it land or just heirlooms, whatever it might be, as small as you might think it is. If you do not have all of that listed and planned out, then you're going to have somebody in government make that decision. And by the way, this doesn't mean people in government are bad inherently. It's the system. And the system is quite inviting to unaccountable people, so you do oftentimes get that. But the fact that it isn't the family, that's the big problem. No medical power of attorney. You don't have that listed. Government makes your medical decisions for you. I mean, this is all stuff that, unfortunately, once upon a time, you did not have to protect yourself from government on this stuff. But today you do. And Ozarks Elder Law can make sure that you're able to do that. Free consultation, 10 area locations. You can find them, ozarkselderlaw.com. Also, Nick's endorsements, ksgf.com.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 100. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 91, and looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 88.
One of the plans of the presumed next mayor of New York City, winning the primary yesterday, left-wing socialist, anti-Semite. New York's come a very long way. Is to create government-run grocery stores. Well, this has worked so well everywhere that this has been tried. I mean, so well. The long lines, people waiting hours upon hours for basic things like bread and toilet paper only to be told, sorry, we're out. Now, of course, anytime you point out that never, ever, ever has this succeeded, we're told, well, it just hasn't been done right. Oh, okay. Isn't it funny how apparently like the pathway to doing something correctly is the way that doesn't work, but the wrong way, according to the left, is the way that has worked? Even the poorest, the lowest level of poverty in the United States, the quality of life is above those in a majority of the rest of the world. I mean, that's just factual. We live in a country in which, because of the freedoms that capitalism, exists within liberty, freedom, our poverty level means that you probably have a plasma TV, have a cell phone, you're fed, you have housing, things that middle and even in some cases like that qualifies you for upper class in some countries. And of course, the more government says, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of this for you, the worse it is for the consumer. It's just always been that way. And there are reasons for that, and I think that those reasons are very interesting and important. But ultimately, just out of the gate, what we do know is it doesn't work. It's like you're testing, let's use example, vaccines. And one vaccine that you try, well, this formula here, now this one over here works very well. This formula, boy, the people got sicker. Well, I think we should focus on doing that. I bet you just didn't inject it right. That's probably the problem. Well, that one's worse off. That guy's worse off. That one just flat out died. That's horrible. Well, it just hasn't been administered properly yet. That's the problem. How about we just go the route that already shows that it works? And here's a thing to understand as well. Noting that something works doesn't mean that it is perfect. Which, that in and of itself is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? This is how the left sells people on their ideas of utter control that don't work. Is they will, for example, we use this system of, capitalism, which is the natural result of liberty. And they will point out, well, but there's still poor people. Okay, let's compare poor people in a society that has greater capitalism versus poor people in countries in which the government says, don't worry, we'll take care of you. This is the same thing with medicine and how they sell the horrific idea of government-controlled medicine is they point out in a system in which it is more free, something bad that happens, and then that means that we should just control it. Well, the problem is that is even worse. So they sell this idea that they can create this perfect situation. And apparently, when it comes to people's need to have food in New York City, the first person ever that is going to successfully be able to fix this problem completely by having government-run grocery stores is a 35-year-old anti-Semite who was born in Uganda. This is the great savior that is going to do what no one in government has ever been able to do. Part of how they sell this foolishness also is to say, well, the private sector can still exist. We're not going to stop that. Well, a few things, of course, occur. Number one, you're able to severely undercut private industry because you're using taxpayer dollars. I want to read through a Breitbart piece in here because it actually cites a journal article by Adam Lahode, who is the owner of Appleton's Marketplace on West End Avenue. And he said that while Hamdani might have good intentions, the idea will spiral into, quote, corruption and money laundering like we've seen in other agencies. You've got so Mamdani outlined his platform on his website, saying people in his city are struggling with the cost of groceries, so of course, they'll just take it over. The site declared Mamdani will create a network of city-owned grocery stores focused on keeping prices low, not making a profit. Without having to pay rent or property taxes, they will reduce overhead and pass on savings to shoppers. They will buy and sell at wholesale prices, centralizing warehousing and distribution, and partner with local neighborhoods on products and sourcing. With New York City already spending millions of dollars to subsidize private grocery store operators, which are not even required to take SNAP and WIC, we should redirect public money to a real public option, he said. Now, in the Journal article, the report noted that more problems would arise because opening such ventures would fail to address the crime and poverty that is shutting down grocery stores in some neighborhoods. Mamdani explained his idea in a video and appeared to accuse grocers in the area of price gouging. Of course, that's what the left always does. Well, and when it comes to some industries, Josh Hawley, too. Mamdani says we will direct city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores whose mission is to lower prices, not price gouging. So what has been occurring in New York is because of the Democrat policies that are already in place, that has made it virtually impossible for grocery stores to even exist. So the government's answer to that, when they create a problem, is to add to the problem by saying, well, okay, now we will give you taxpayer dollars to subsidize you so you can stay open. Mamdani is saying, well, we're going to take those away. So you have private industry that has become reliant on taxpayer subsidies because of the economic policies of the left. And this new mayor, or what presumably will be the new mayor after the general election, saying we're going to take those away, which is going to make it, to what degree privately owned grocery stores are going to shut down. And so you're going to end up with a lot of people, particularly those that don't have the means to travel, with very, very limited options. And by the way, the profit margins for grocery stores on average are 1% to 2%. 1% to 2%. That's hardly price gouging. And the nice thing about having government-run grocery stores is they don't have to worry about competing with anyone. No. They don't have to worry about having better products. Once you run the private industry out, you get to do whatever you want. And it doesn't even matter how poorly you perform, because the formula for government success is failure. The more you fail, the more money you get. Bernie said, now you and I, we think, how do these people not get it? They do. Bernie Sanders once argued that having limited food for people in which they have to stand in line like the Soviet Union style, wait in line for 4 hours to get half a loaf of bread, that was actually good because it was more equitable. Which, of course, it isn't, because when you're talking about a structure like the Soviet Union, the connected certainly don't wait in those lines. Mamdani, if he does, in fact, become the next mayor of New York, he's not going to be standing in those bread lines. No, doesn't affect him. So it actually creates an even bigger gap with a much smaller number of people who have a higher quality of life and a much larger number of people that have a lower quality of life. And while you and I would say to ourselves, well, I guess these idiots will see, they won't. They won't see. The left never seems to get it. You know, it's interesting because one of the statements that Mamdani made, see if I can find the quote here. He said, now, okay, so among other things, hey, don't worry, we'll feed you. You don't need to worry about that anymore. You can rely on us with grocery stores. He's also promised to eliminate fares to ride New York City's busing system, to make the City University of New York tuition free, freeze rents on municipal housing. Well, that's going to work out just brilliantly. And free child care for children up to the age of 5. So what his promise is that you will be reliant on New York for transportation, for food, for education, for your housing, for your child care. Now, I don't know about you, but his next state, he said, quote, in our New York, the power belongs to the people. Does that really sound like that's empowering for citizens of New York? When virtually every aspect of your life becomes something that is determined by the government? When it comes to your housing, when it comes to how it is that your child is going to be raised, when it comes to what sort of food will be available to you at the grocery store. Because, you know, the buying power, the capitalistic system of democracy is gone. The government decides, not the people. The government decides the pricing. The government decides what produce to stock. The government gets to decide what you will and won't have available to you. Is that really the power belonging to the people? In which you become totally and completely dependent, all of the aspects of your life are determined by a politician? That is not power to the people. That is taking away what little power there may be left of the people in New York City. But hey, they're the ones surrendering it. And then you get to throw in the idea that anti-Semitism will not rise in New York City is just a laughable notion. So whether he will be more damaging to the Democrat brand or more damaging to New York City, to normal people, like I said, people on the left, they just, I don't know, they love it. Self-destructive. Miserable people. But to average people, we shall see. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line regarding the socialist candidates ran as a Democrat in New York that apparently won the primary there, noting if he's a Democrat candidate, the Jewish people will vote for him. I don't understand. It will be interesting to see the reaction to the Jewish community, given that he refuses to acknowledge the right of Jews to exist in Israel, and that he has been openly supportive of global intifada. Because in terms of an elected official in an executive position, I don't know there's been anyone that is so openly anti-Semitic as Mamdani. And this is something that, the past year we've at least seen a little bit of positive movement within the Jewish community that has always have a significant portion that vote lockstep in with the Democrat Party. And then after October 7th, it became very, very clear. It was no longer deniable that anti-Semitism lived within the Democrat Party. And they had been relatively successful for a while at making it look as if that were some sort of Republican Party problem. In fact, there's this show on Natasha Lyonne. It's on Hulu, I believe. It's called Poker Face. It's in the second season. First season was a few years ago. And it's a pretty, I like the show. It is an homage to Columbo. Even the opening credits are very Columbo-like. Her character, even though she's a younger female than Columbo was, a lot of the mannerisms, the approach, it's a really interesting way to do a show, and I like it. If you like Columbo, I don't know, you may either hate it or really love it. But nonetheless, we were watching the first season again because the second season had begun, several weeks ago, and the first season ended a couple years ago, and so we're like, we couldn't recall the way it left off. Do we need to be caught up? Should we go back and watch? And there was an episode in which she is driving through the countryside, and she's listening to the radio, and it comes on talk radio, and the talk radio host is, typical kind of right-winger guy, and she picks up this dog. And the dog won't stop barking until she turns the radio station to the right-wing radio host. And so at one point she gets real frustrated with the dog and calls him a string of names, and among others is anti-Semite. And it just really struck me that the left, or that how prior to October 7th, how easily the left was able to portray conservatives or right-wingers as being anti-Semitic. It was just written in naturally to this script. Like I said, she called him you homophobic, anti-Semitic. She was just listing all of these sort of stereotypical names that the left had been relatively successful at getting away with calling conservatives or Republicans or Trump supporters. And I thought to myself, boy, that did not age well. And, of course, they're still able to a degree falsely label Republicans as racist and, anti-science and so forth. But the anti-Semitic one, it's just so clear where the anti-Semitism is in this country, in which the two political parties, they just can't get away with that. In fact, it's glaring. If they try to, it's like, really? Are you serious? You're really going to pull that one? Will the combination of this recognition culturally that the Democrat Party is the party that has an anti-Semitism problem, and of course the Kamala Harris refusing to pick Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania because he was Jewish as a running mate, that fed into it. And now Democrat voters, specifically it appears as if by exit polling, white liberals, it looks like Cuomo got the Hispanic and black vote, where Mamdani, the anti-Semite, got the liberal white vote. if, whether that is going to be something that pushes the Jewish community to come out and really start making it clear that they recognize where anti-Semitism is in this country and which political party. And if there is a significant movement away from it, and whether or not that will, if it does happen in New York, if that is something that will have an impact on the Democrat Party nationwide. This is just a very clear sort of, I don't know, signal that the Democrat Party is becoming more and more comfortable being anti-Semitic, even beyond what they have done thus far, and what the reaction of the Jewish community will be. We'll see. We'll see. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Free fuel for summer still available to you. Pinnaker Honda. So you buy a new Honda vehicle, you're going to get that free gas for the summer. They are also wanting to buy your vehicle, especially looking for quality used Hondas, offering top dollar for your vehicle. Plus, they'll throw an extra $1,000 towards your trade-in with the purchase of a new Honda. So now is a great time to trade up. And if you are looking for a pre-owned, you have just a bit longer to get in on the 0.99% APR Honda True Certified Dream Deal sales event. That will end on the 30th. So that is coming up around the corner. All this, plus so much more with the totally awesome family-owned Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. We have a Heroes Breakfast coming up this Friday. You veterans, make your way out to Scramblers because Scramblers, along with Warrior's Journey, Delta Roofing and Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, are buying you breakfast between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. That is this Friday. Now, if you're not a veteran, you can still come by and have breakfast. We don't close the place off, but it is the veterans that get the free breakfast. You know, as I was watching over the last several days, of course, the ceasefire has been holding for, I don't know, a day or so now. But as it became very clear, while the Israelis were specifically targeting military facilities, and then the Iranians were specifically trying to kill as many innocent civilians as possible, I couldn't help but wonder if Roundtree Elementary is still proudly donning the Iranian flag in their gymnasium.
That's a good question.
Yeah. Still proud of that rich cultural heritage of the number one exporter of terrorism in the world that was trying to kill as many Jews as possible. I think it's just a legitimate question. I suspect that they probably still have it up there. Just gonna really go out, just really go out on a limb and make that I guess, but maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. J.D. Vance was giving the keynote remarks yesterday at the Ohio Republican Party dinner in Ohio. And he was relaying a story. This is a funny story, by the way, particularly given all of the developments lately with nuclear weapons and capabilities of developing nuclear weapons with Iran. And J.D. Vance was relaying a story from the just very, very early days of this administration in which he's vice president, which it's crazy as much as has been accomplished. He's only really been, 5 or 6 months?
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem longer than that?
Yeah, it really does.
Not in a bad way. I know it does to...
It's just with everything that's happening.
All of these massive things that... Any one thing that Trump has managed to do in this 6 months would be a defining thing of any previous administration. But he's just done one after another, after another, after another. You think 6 months, I don't know. It just seems like it's been longer than that. J.D. Vance was relaying a story about interaction he had with President Trump, in which, of course, he had obviously known Trump for some time being on the campaign trail. But once you get there in the White House, and it's business. And, with Trump, it's business. You get down to business and you take care of business. Much, much different environment and atmosphere. And at this event last night, J.D. Vance described one particular interaction with President Donald Trump.
And the president looks over at me, puts the foreign leader on mute and says, "This is not going very well." And he presses the red button. and my eyes get really big. And I'm like, "Mr. President, what just happened?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Nuclear." Nuclear. And 2 minutes later, a guy walks in with a Diet Coke and he looks back at me and he says, "It wasn't nuclear. It's just the Diet Coke button." And that's so that's the kind of guy, and my fellow Republicans, that we have as the president of the United States.
People, I've always said since his first win for the presidency, and these people that just hated the guy before he even got sworn in. He was meeting. I remember these meetings he would have with all these people, and these would oftentimes be sworn enemies, and then they would come out of the room with him, and you could just, their demeanor was different. They would talk about how they look forward to working with the president and, this and that, and you could tell it wasn't them trying to be nice. That there's genuinely this shift in the way that they felt about Donald Trump. And when you hear some of these stories, some of the things that he does behind the scenes, you can see why that is. that he's not, and this is part of why Bill Maher was so hated on by the left, because Bill Maher described this experience that he had where Donald Trump, when he's out there, is he's different because it's business, because he's being president. But if you are alone with him in a casual manner, like most of us, if you watch us at work, we're going to be, and the things that we talk about, the things that we do, the way that we carry ourselves is going to be different than if we're at the lake or where, and I guess some people may not have any sort of defining characteristics between their professionalism and just casual nature. But I think to some degree, most people do. And Donald Trump, because when it comes down to business, he's this, deal maker, kind of hard hitting guy. And when he's just dealing with people as human beings, just a couple of guys out golfing or just sitting having a conversation over Diet Coke, it's surprising to people who have this stereotype of him. And of course, Bill Maher talked about that. He's like, that guy that that's not who was there. And even, Bill Maher sort of whined about the fact, well, why can't the guy that I met in the Oval, why can't that be the guy who's president? Well, I would argue because he wouldn't be as successful. He wouldn't get a lot of the things done. So anyway, when you hear stories like that, I think it just does really show why it is that even people who dislike him, once they get in a room with him, and it's not about negotiations, but just maybe about having conversations, and it can even be conversations in which, again, Bill Maher and Donald Trump, they don't agree with each other, but it's just a conversation. It's not about winning or making a deal. They find that he just flat out is a likable guy. And I think, honestly, that's one of the reasons people on the left hate him so much, which is kind of sad, really. It was one of the things that Republicans, as much as they may have disliked Bill Clinton, they always knew that's what they're like, but he's really likable. I mean, he's a very likable guy. Republicans always had the ability and the maturity to recognize that. And that's just something the left doesn't seem to possess as human beings. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 100. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91, and looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 88.
One of the other promises that the Democrat nominee for mayor, who will presumably be the next mayor with the general election being in November, has promised is a $30 minimum wage. It'll be interesting to see if Josh Hawley endorses that. He likes jacking those minimum wages up there, $30. Also free baby little carriers when you have a baby. That's another promise. He's got a lot of just fantastic things. I don't know why someone didn't think of all this before.
Right, yeah.
I mean, if it's that easy, and that makes everything so wonderful, thank goodness. Thank goodness. For the people of New York, they are going to show us all the way and what a great utopia it will now become. He also is in favor of, once he becomes new mayor, getting rid of police and replacing them with social workers. So If you're in New York City,
It's exactly what New York City needs.
oh yeah, absolutely. So if you're in New York City, somebody breaks into your apartment, rapes you, or is in the process of raping you, and you call police, and you'll know that a social worker will show up. And so everybody can sit around and talk about their feelings, or something like that. Hopefully he'll disarm what law enforcement he leaves behind as well, because no guns means no violence. Traffic update. I want a great homeloan.com, but I can't own my own home. I don't have 20% to put down. There are programs, especially if you've never owned a home before, gotten a home loan before, that could very well apply to you. Those standard once upon a time guardrails, if you will, that were always in place aren't in place any longer. And so if you're someone who is paying, $1,200 a month for rent, you're paying someone's mortgage. It's not yours. So that money is just gone. It's one of the nice things. And if you've never owned a home, and of course it's not for everybody, but being a homeowner really changed my perspective, because whenever I make that mortgage payment, I'm paying myself. Really is what's happening. I'm paying myself because that equity goes into my home. And then guess what I'm not doing once the loan's paid off? I'm not paying rent, not paying mortgage. And then if I've got that as a value and as an asset versus 15, 20, 30 years renting and you have nothing. Someone else has your something. And again, it's all a matter of personal preference. But if you haven't taken that step because you think that you do not have the financial capabilities to do so, I recommend, particularly when it comes to that 20% down stuff, that you reach out to the characters, the team at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you may very well find out that you can be a homeowner. And there's also refinancing for those of you who currently have home loans, and then reverse mortgages. iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. The FBI is investigating a vice mayor of the city of Cudahy in California. This is an area that it's like 97% Hispanic. And there have been a number of sort of smaller riot/protests that have taken place. Law enforcement has been attacked by the left-wing activists, vehicles attacked, and so forth. The vice mayor is under investigation because, and I'm going to play the audio. She posted this audio in which she is challenging rival gangs to come out and protect their territory from law enforcement. She did this openly, trying to shame them for not protecting their territories. Talking about gang members, violent murderers, rapists. human traffickers and drug runners. This is a Democrat vice mayor of a city in California. Here's her video posting.
Not for nothing, but I want to know where all the solos are at in Los Angeles. 18th Street, Florencia. Where's the leadership at? Because you guys are all about territory, and this is 18th Street, and this is Florencia. You guys tag everything up, claiming hood. And now that your hood's being invaded by the biggest gang there ain't a peep out of you. It's everyone else who's not about the gang life that's out there protesting and speaking up. We're out there like fighting our turf, protecting our turf, protecting our people. And like, where you at? Bien calladitos, todos los chulitos. I'm like, dude, they're running amok all up on your streets and in your city. And Pete, when the big gang guns come in, nothing but like quiet, and we're out here, the regular ones that have never been jumped in, out here calling things out, trying to organize people, trying to do the thing. So don't be trying to claim no block, no nothing. If you're not showing up right now, trying to like help out and organize, I don't want to hear a peep out of you once they're gone, trying to claim that this is my block. This was not your block. You weren't even here helping out. So whoever's the leadership over there, just get your members in order.
So this is a message to the gangs that control areas of her city. She's trying to shame them because they aren't coming out and fighting against law enforcement. This is a sitting vice mayor of Cudahy, California, Cynthia Gonzalez, telling them, whatever leadership, you need to get your people out here. Now, the few Democrats who have commented on this, like, well, freedom of speech. I mean, jeez. Is there no bottoming out for this political party? Can someone who identifies as a Democrat tell me what line is there? Is there at some moment you go, well, now that was too far? Anything? And can you answer that without going, well, is there anything that Trump can do too far? Can you give an answer without somehow obsessing over Trump? You got separate ends of the coast here. On the East Coast, Democrat voters, which appear based off exit polling were white liberals, voted for an openly anti-Semitic individual who has refused to acknowledge that Jews have the right to live in Israel. And out on the left coast, albeit a small city or town, Cudahy, California, the current vice mayor on social media posting a video trying to shame leaders of gangs for not coming out and fighting against law enforcement, not reclaiming their territory from law enforcement. As you can imagine, she's taken the post down. But where is the line? At what point do you say, you know what, I'm out? This is not the party for me. That, of course, doesn't mean that you all of a sudden have the values of the Republican Party, but are these really the values you're clinging to? Can you imagine if during the Biden administration, a Republican elected official took to social media encouraging, let's say, white supremacists to come out and to regain their territory from law enforcement? Can you imagine? I mean, it would be non-stop portrayal of what the Republican Party has become, falsely, of course. Part of the reason that, of course, this doesn't get a lot of traction because the media wants to protect as best as they can what is already a failed image of the Democrat Party. But I think another part of it is that this is becoming so routine. This, even with the Iranian deal, A lot of Democrats were smart enough to kind of back away from criticism on that. And while there are, I think, legitimate questions to be asked about presidential powers and so forth, it's just with like, oh, gee, Democrats are going to, be against Trump's action against the number one exporter of terrorism. What a shock, which side they chose there. Every time there is someone that the Democrats are standing up for or encouraging to get out there into the streets, there are always these horrible, bad people. They're just bad. And I think that the American people have gotten so accustomed to Democrats standing up consistently for human traffickers and wife beaters, rapists, child molesters, gang members, exporters of terrorism, that it sort of becomes a shoulder shrug at this point. Like, well, that's who they are. I would genuinely like for there to be two political parties in which one wasn't totally insane, where you could have a choice and either one you chose wasn't a path of anti-Semitism or terrorism or anti-law enforcement or standing up for spouse abusers or wanting to mutilate the genitalia of kids. It would be nice if there was just an additional choice. This ultimately, what it really does boil down to is these are Democrat voters, and enough of them are sticking with this. That's why this is continuing. And when obviously Republicans are going to be outraged by this sort of thing, but when Democrats aren't the ones who are outraged and demanding a resignation, I haven't heard a single Democrat even address this. But in addition to that, not addressing it, no one's saying that's not who we are. You notice that? And not only have Democrats not said that's not who we are when it comes to their new nominee for mayor of New York, being proudly anti-Semitic, they have in their vote said this is who we are. It would just be really nice if there was some alternative. I don't like being locked into a system in which if you have any level of sanity and you want to participate in the democratic process, the Republican Party is kind of where you got to vote. If you want, now I know libertarian, independent, I know, I understand that, but realistically, let's look at the landscape and what we're dealing with here. And part of the reason that I don't like that is because then it kind of allows the Republican Party to be a little big government spin. It allows people like Josh Hawley to go around pushing price controls and $15 an hour minimum wage and all of this crazy stuff that has Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders line, because it's sort of, I think his attitude is, well, who are you going to vote for? You're going to vote for the Democrats, the anti-Semitic party? And so it forces normal people to choose oftentimes a fiscally irresponsible party. Really wish you Democrats would, I don't know, fix this problem that you all have. I don't ask a lot. Want to win a pizza party at work? Godfather's Pizza, some of the best that you can put in your tummy. Just go to KSGF.com and you'll find the win Godfather's Pizza Party. Get yourself signed up, and if you win, then we'll get in touch with you, and wherever it is you work, we'll bring you some pizzas. How about that for a deal? KSGF.com.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 100. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91, and looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 88.
Oh, phooey. Oh, no, good. Okay, let's see here. I thought I didn't save this audio. So
What do you got for us?
this is yesterday, I believe this took place, and RFK Jr., aside from his political beliefs and positions, I do believe he genuinely reflects, and you see it, his frustration with watching people who election after election after election, they get in there and claim, oh, we're going to do this, and then they never do it. And then he comes in and is like, let's actually do this, and then they dog on him for it. And there have been a number of exchanges between a number of these lawmakers in which they'll wag the finger at him as if they're the great saviors. And he points out, you have been in this position for 40 years, and you're always saying you're going to fix it. You don't. And I understood his frustration, and I didn't see it as an ego thing. He said, can I get a little credit here? I got it done in 3 weeks. You know, whatever it was that was being discussed at the time. It was during one of these committee hearings. And it's I think what we observe with this frustration is an even greater understanding of how so many of these people don't want to fix these problems, and how frustrating it is for somebody, even if you don't necessarily agree with what RFK Jr. sees as the problem in any particular situation, that he's doing what all of these people campaign and say they're going to do, but then when he does it, they trash on him for it. Now, he was testifying most recently before the House Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee, this is yesterday morning, regarding the department's fiscal 2026 budget request and the Trump administration's determination to make America healthy again. And during the hearing, Representative Frank Pallone, a Democrat from New Jersey, tried to slander Kennedy as a conspiracy theorist because this is one of their go-tos. It's like racist, you know. It's just, you're a conspiracy theorist, and so that means no one should listen to you. He accused the HHS secretary of advancing a dangerous pseudoscience and putting American lives in danger by firing civil servants and eliminating agencies within the department. And so this is part of the reaction from RFK Jr.
I'll address you, Congressman Pallone. 15 years ago, you and I met. You were at that time a champion for people who had suffered injuries from vaccines. You were very adamant about it. You were the leading member of Congress on that issue. Since then, you've accepted $2 million from pharmaceutical companies in contribution, more than any other member of this committee. And your enthusiasm for supporting the old ACIP committee, which was completely rife and pervasive with pharmaceutical conflicts, seems to be an outcome of those contributions.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Point of order.
The chair recognizes
Point of order.
Dr.
The gentleman is impugning the reputation of a member of Congress.
No.
Stop the clock. Can you stop the clock for a second? Can you state the point of order?
Yeah. He was impugning Mr. Pallone's.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear it. Did the
Oh,
gentleman?
you weren't paying attention. That's why.
Well, you know, it's hard to pay attention here when we're not getting any response.
Okay.
RFK Jr. may not. Listen. He has fully said, fully acknowledged. So I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to dispense out personal medical advice to people. That's what you do that with your doctor. His approach on this, frankly, is the approach that everyone claims that they want. Somebody that's honest, somebody that's transparent, somebody that goes in with a stated goal that the American people want. They try to go through with it, but they don't try to claim that they're the end all be all. They don't do a Fauci and say, if you don't listen to me, then you're anti-science. His approach has been one of total transparency. And you listen to this clown show. And RFK Jr., and I'm glad that he points some of this out. Now, it's a violation of, you're not supposed to impugn the character of, And so you had another Democrat. The Democrat that started pitching a fit wasn't the Democrat that RFK Jr. was speaking to, in which he noted that, 30 years ago, we were having these conversations, and then you start getting millions and millions and millions from Big Pharma, and all of a sudden, like so many of these other lawmakers. It's amazing how many of these left-wing politicians run around really talking about, we're going to stick it to Big Pharma, but then in reality, they're taking money from Big Pharma. And when somebody like RFK Jr. comes in and doesn't have the highest opinion of Big Pharma, suddenly they get all defensive. And when RFK Jr. points out all the money they grab, I think he noted $2.2 million. Joe Biden, by the way, in the Open Secrets site that shows donations from Big Pharma, Joe Biden had taken $9.1 million, Kamala Harris $8 million, Barack Obama $6 million, Hillary Clinton $4 million, Mitt Romney $3.3. What a shock that is. Bernie Sanders is on there as well, almost $2 million. Which is something that RFK Jr. has pointed out during the hearing before, and Bernie Sanders' excuse was, well, it wasn't as much as others. Oh, okay. These people. And then, at the same time, the news leader has a piece, and they are still doubling down on this idea that Americans who question some of the BS that was being shoveled out during COVID were the problem. This is a Springfield News Leader headline. Disinformation, conspiracy theories spread with diseases and polarized echo chamber times. And of course, the entire argument laid out in this piece is basically, right-wingers and people like RFK Jr., they don't listen to the experts. And there's no mention of how many times we were lied to. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. The distrust that the American people have when it comes to what the government is telling us regarding diseases in particular. You think about, we were all told that this came from Chinese people eating bat snacks at a market. That's what we were told. That's what Fauci was running around trying to cover up the truth in order to spread that disinformation campaign. You know, those crazy Chinese people, they just like a bat on a stick, just like corn dogs at the Ozark Empire Fair, but they have bats, and, what are you going to do? And you had people that were, well, gosh. It's right in that area where that Wuhan lab is, and there's some funding going on, and the gain of function thing, and so just curious people started going, well, what about that? Don't question us. Don't question us. And we've learned about the cover-up. This isn't anything that's secret any longer. It's not debatable any longer. The Fauci went around squashing anyone that was not going to carry the disinformation campaign. And then on a just operational scale, his lies about masks and the 6 feet, and at one point claiming, well, I never suggested schools close, and all of this. Oh, no, that's not why people distrust government when it comes to this stuff. No, that's not. It's because of people like RFK Jr. I thought one of the in the story, I'm not going to go through it because it's such propaganda. Part of the story in the news leader, distrust gained traction during the pandemic, noting that distrust in science, which was always there to some extent, gained traction during the pandemic when concrete restrictions were imposed to slow the spread of the virus. It also didn't help that scientists should have been clearer that early information at the beginning of the pandemic reflected educated guesses about the virus, said a virologist that they interviewed here. Now, what is just so brilliant about that is that was the point that so many of us that were called science deniers were making. That this is too early to be making such solid declarations. When they were running around saying, oh, this is a vaccine, this will stop the spread of it. We're like, can you really declare that yet? Because you haven't even really rolled it out yet. Of course, that turned out not to be true. Oh, don't worry, there's no side effects whatsoever. Well, Big Pharma told us that. So don't question it. And people are like, well, how can you declare there's no side effect? Oftentimes side effects take months or years to formulate. You can't know that. There's no time frame for these studies to take place. This is such gaslighting. This article that is, again, it's supposed to paint you and people like you and me with this perspective of questioning things and noting that it was way too early to tell with certain their declarations of how safe and wonderful all of these vaccines were going to be. That position of blaming people like us, saying, well, the scientists just probably, if there's any fault with these experts, they should have just, let the citizens know and understand that, a lot of what they were doing, educated guesses, and, they couldn't really know for sure. That's what we were saying. And then we were told by people like Fauci, if you don't agree with me, then you're anti-science. You don't support science. So taking what it is that we were saying, and we were insulted, we were called anti-science and now that is being used in this particular quote news article in the news leader against us. These people have, and this is why it's this mindset, this mentality. As long as that is in place, people will not trust this government, and they will not trust people that we are told are experts. Because even when the approach of the average American proved to be the accurate and correct one, the so-called experts still tell us, no, you were wrong. We were right. And we were wrong because we didn't understand that sometimes they could be wrong. And if they were wrong, it was that they failed to inform us that sometimes that they could be wrong, which, of course, is what we were saying the whole time. The piece does also touch on the dire consequences of blocking funding to some of these universities because of the rampant anti-Semitism. And the piece notes that though the public perceives most university faculty as left-leaning, those involved in scientific research are focused almost solely on their work. One of the virologists said, saying that his life has been dedicated to understanding HIV and other viruses, not politics. Quote, it's been incredibly distracting, he said, of the impact of research funding cuts. Scientists are supposed to be, thinking about science. That's what they do best. Though Hicks believes some universities have brought attention to themselves by mishandling anti-Semitic protests and some other issues, he said cutting money for the research is not the answer. Now, understand that perspective here. When a university loses funding because they refuse to protect Jews on campus, in the minds of the scientists that are put up as experts in this particular article, they're not the bad guys. Those protecting anti-Semitism, those universities that are willing to give up millions and millions and millions of dollars of research dollars in exchange for allowing anti-Semitism, that's not where the problem is. The problem is with the current administration who wants to stop anti-Semitism. Now, if that isn't a further double down on the culture of anti-Semitism in that country, well, the Jews should just deal with it. That's just the cost of doing business. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Summer is in full swing, and with temperatures almost reaching 100 degrees, you don't want to be stuck with no AC. If you get home today, you experience a muggy, hot house, don't go at it alone. I want to recommend Russell and his team over at Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. With over 35 plus years of experience, they really are the go-to experts in the KSGF listening area. They provide residential and commercial services, and they also have a 24/7 emergency line for things that just pop up out of those normal business hours. Whether you need an AC tune-up, a service repair, or maybe it is time to finally do that upgrade, the Foreman team does it all. So if it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, make sure to reach out to Russell today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. We were also told that calling it the Wuhan virus was somehow racist while claiming bats for food wasn't. I always thought that that was an interesting contradiction. This was, again, when Fauci was leading the effort to cover up for the Chinese government and probably himself and the connections he had to funding, specifically to the Wuhan lab there, and the escape of this virus. And he's running around saying, no, it's because Chinese people, they're weird. Like, they go to the market, and while you get cotton candy, they eat a bat. They're crazy over there. And the people who instead were saying, it kind of looks like maybe the government had something to do with it and referenced Wuhan, that was the racist position, as opposed to trying to convince Americans and the world that, well, Chinese people, they eat the crazy, it's their fault. It's their culture. It's their fault because they won't, follow these sanitation rules and everything. The position of Fauci world out of the gate was always the one that was clearly much more racist. But, Fauci was God. He had a bobblehead made after him. He's just this hero. Hero worship of Fauci, the great Fauci. No matter how many times he gets caught lying, no matter how many emails get exposed of him trying to cover things up, no matter how many beagles he paid to torture, he's an expert. And he doesn't like Trump, see, so that means that he's better than God, who, of course, doesn't exist. Some of the latest in the upcoming hour, there was an attempt, once again, Democrats to impeach Donald Trump, which this has become like breathing for the left. And there were more Democrats that sided with Republicans against impeachment than there were Democrats that voted for impeachment. So there are signs that some of them are getting it, especially when it's meaningless, right? I mean, they know nothing's going to happen with it. And I think what a lot of it's just the fact that you're going to impeach him over something that every Democrat president has done in modern history, taking military action in the same fashion that Trump did. They're really going to do that. And it would once again put them on display when it comes to choosing sides. It's the bad guy again that they side with. The number one exporter of terrorism. What a shock. They want to impeach Trump over taking action against them. News in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. So there was a vote to impeach Trump over the action he took to denuclearize Iran, the number one exporter of terrorism in the world, who has openly said, we want to wipe the Jews off the map. And so one way for the anti-Semites in the world to do that is develop a nuclear weapon. There are other ways, like, I don't know, elect an anti-Semitic mayor for New York. There's just, more than one ways to, what do they say, eat an apple or eat an elephant, I guess, or something. I don't know. 128 Democrats joined the House GOP to block the other Democrats' bid to impeach Trump. The vote was 344 to 79. Quite disappointing for the Democrats there. Jasmine Crockett, who has continued to be held up as an example of the best of what the Democrat Party has to offer. She is also on the DOJ committee, the House Oversight Committee, and there was a hearing on locking in the DOJ cuts. Crockett decided to take things in another direction and give her brilliant, articulate analysis of Trump's decision.
Let me tell you, just dropping those few bombs in one day, that was the beginning of what is going to be a very long bill for us as they talk about being efficient. There was nothing efficient about doing it. And maybe if there was some consultation, maybe with those that say have constitutional authority, since we care about the Constitution, then maybe we could have saved the American people not only money, but the lives that are now at risk as we have to put out warnings for American citizens in this country and abroad. Maybe we need to start leading with the people at the middle of what it is that is guiding us.
Okay. Yeah, that'll, I'm sure, generations from now, it'll be in history books as the, again, brilliant analysis of the left, one of the shining stars of the Democrat Party. Made perfect sense to me. She referenced there in something that the Trump administration has had to do is shift the focus of some within the FBI on trying to track down a number of these Iranians that were deliberately let into the country by the Biden administration. They were let go deliberately. And so now we have a bunch of individuals in this country, some of which were on an elevated alert system list. And at the time when there were requests to know why, the Biden administration cited the privacy of the potential terrorists for reasons that they would not reveal that information. Now, this was at the same time when it was known by the Biden administration that the Iranians had plans in place to try to assassinate Trump. I'm sure there's no connection there whatsoever, just recklessness. As usual, incompetence is the defense of the Democrat Party. That they would deliberately release people into this country who tried to sneak into this country from a country that was dispatching people in order to assassinate Biden's political opponent. Now, the assessment here by the brilliant Democrat Congresswoman Crockett is that the downside of taking out the nuclear capabilities of Iran is that now we have to worry about these potential terrorists being activated. So her position apparently is we should be held hostage by those individuals. That because the Biden administration deliberately released those people into this country, that should be a reason that Trump did not take out the nuclear capabilities of Iran, because those individuals may be activated to carry out some sort of terrorist attack. So essentially surrender. Now, of course, there are plenty of other arguments, including potential constitutional arguments that this wasn't the best thing for Trump to do. I'm not saying that there aren't arguments that can be made by intelligent people. This just isn't one of them. The argument that because of these potential terrorists in our country may retaliate, that we should not move forward with what it is, that the President of the United States should not do what he believes is in the best interest of the United States of America and the world. That's called surrender. Coming up, play some audio of Trump in which he addresses what has been portrayed by the White House as disinformation from CNN, MSNBC, and their claims that a source has told them that this was a failure. John Kerry also has said, well, it doesn't really matter if we destroyed the infrastructure because they remember how to make these weapons, and so evidently that means we should just let them. It's just as easy as, I guess, just get starting right back up, and in a couple weeks they'll be going again. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll have a chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 100. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91, and looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 88.
So yesterday, a top secret intelligence assessment about the U.S.'s strikes on Iranian nuclear sites was leaked to CNN. CNN disclosed it on live TV. And it essentially was claiming that an early assessment from the Pentagon intelligence arm revealed Iran's nuclear sites were largely intact, and the U.S. strikes only set them back a few months. Now, here's the one thing I know, is you can put absolutely no faith in that whatsoever. Does it mean that it's untrue? Probably at the time that it got released, it might have been a little too early to say that for sure. But are you serious? An anonymous source. I mean, the sources that CNN and MSNBC have used to give their expert analysis regarding anything intelligence really hasn't proven to be that accurate, to put it mildly. I mean, are these the same intelligence sources CNN used in order to tell us that, Russia was colluding with Trump because they had dirt on him? These are the same intelligence sources CNN used in order to declare that the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't accurate or wasn't real, it was Russian disinformation. Are these the same intelligence sources that told us COVID came from Chinese people eating bats at the farmer's market? I mean, really, at this point, I think I'd be embarrassed if I were CNN to trot out one of their anonymous intelligence sources. Are these the same intelligence sources that just barely into Trump's first term, Chuck Schumer on MSNBC with Rachel Maddow openly acknowledged that if the intelligence community doesn't like you, they will screw you over, as a warning to Trump? I mean, I thought it was just one of the most amazing acknowledgments that they will do what, even you're the president of the United States, they will undermine you. They will do what they can to screw you over. That's Chuck Schumer openly admitting that. No one seemed to think that was a real problem, by the way. Now, the Trump administration has said, of course, this is not true. Trump had a few words specifically for CNN and MSNBC for carrying the story.
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean. Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there? Absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. If you take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers.
All right, so that was Trump responding to the reports based off these anonymous sources that, it was a failure and only set it back a few months. And I think we know why this is. Here's the sick thing. They want it to be a failure. They would prefer Trump fail and Iran be able to move forward with their desires to completely eliminate Israel off the map with a nuclear weapon, they would rather that be the scenario than Trump once again succeeding at something. That's how sick they are. Sick. You know, when special forces went into Pakistan to take out bin Laden, I don't remember Republicans coming out and poo-pooing it, saying, how dare you didn't ask for authorization to go into Pakistan. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. Nor were there complaints to that capacity of any of the. So it was like one after another, after another, after another. I believe during the 5 last night of Obama announced, I'll come out to announce I've authorized strikes on this country over here. And then it was another one. It was like 3 or 4 different announcements, different times of Obama announcing that he had authorized strikes against somebody else, somewhere else. And it was just, oh, Obama's the most awesome guy ever. I mean, even like I said, Republicans didn't, particularly when it came to bin Laden, they were like, this is really great. This is a time we can all come together. Of course, there was only one person who was against the raid to get bin Laden, and that was Joe Biden. The one person in the room was like, guys, I don't think this is a good idea. Okay, Joe. Another brilliant call. Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, was on with Laura Ingraham last night, giving his assessment on the success of the attempt to take out the nuclear facilities in Iran.
There are 3 distinct facilities in Iran that we were concerned with. Isfahan, which is a conversion facility. You cannot weaponize unless you have what's called the conversion process at the beginning of enrichment, and then a conversion process to metallicize the material at the end of enrichment. That conversion facility, which as far as we know is the only facility in Iran that can do this, was completely destroyed at Isfahan. It's above ground. It was hit with a 30,000-pound bunker buster, and it could not survive that hit. So they have no conversion opportunity, and that means they cannot weaponize, even if they've enriched to 90%. Then there are 2 other nuclear reactors in Natanz, one above ground and one below ground. The below ground one we know we eviscerated, and the above ground one, which had been hit by the Israelis and had been substantially damaged, we put another bomb on top of it just to make sure that it was eviscerated, and we know for a fact it was. Fordo is the last enrichment reactor that was operating there, and we put 12 bunker buster bombs on Fordo. There's no doubt that it breached the canopy. There's no doubt that it was well within reach of the depth that these bunker buster bombs go to, and there's no doubt that it was obliterated. So the reporting out there that in some ways suggests that we did not achieve the objective is just completely preposterous.
All right, so that is pretty seemingly informed assessment from Witkoff there. Again, we could go back and play Crockett's articulated understanding of everything that went on over there, but I mean, it's just this floundering of the left, floundering of the Democrat Party. Now, there have been some Democrats, Fetterman being one of them, Joe Scarborough even, that are like, yeah, this was the right thing to do. Antony Blinken has an op-ed, either an op-ed or he's quoted an op-ed, saying it was the wrong thing to do, but he hopes it works. Now, John Kerry, of course, who's demonstrated to be such an expert when it comes to all things Middle East, he was asked his thoughts on the strike, and he thinks that they will be up and running before the world knows it.
I do think people have to be realistic here in understanding what the choices are. Iran is a proud, proud, proud nation. One of the things I learned in my negotiations was the level of pride was just enormous. They also have been committed to the destruction of Israel. That's a cultural, almost religious component of their policy. And so it's very hard to say what exactly is going to bring them back to the table. But I know this. You cannot bomb away the memory of how to make a bomb. You can't bomb away the knowledge that they have developed. You can't bomb away, the broad array of technicians who've been working on this for years, who will go back to work if that's the mission they're given by the leadership of the country.
All right, so what does that even mean? This is the level of stupidity of a guy who, by the way, has demonstrated he is clueless when it comes to how things, people, he's trying to peacock around like I really know these people. Well, apparently not. Now, this argument that, well, they're going to remember how to build this. Well, that's like saying, in any sort of military conflict, well, they're going to remember how to build bridges, so I guess let's not take those out. Well, they're going to remember how to build new fighter jets, so we shouldn't take those out. Well, they're going to remember how to make new babies that could grow up to be terrorists, so I guess we better not take those people out. Well, yeah. Okay. If the fact that somebody can remember how to rebuild something or create something means that we shouldn't destroy it, I guess we might as well never even do that then. Is it any wonder why things until Trump came along in the Middle East always stayed the exact same? Because of brainiacs like John Kerry. And by the way, he was on CNN with Christiane Amanpour, who's supposed to be one of the most sophisticated news analysts out there, particularly when it comes to international relations. This is once again somebody who is deemed an expert, who has demonstrated over and over and over again he has no clue what he's talking about. He's wrong all the time. Oh, but he's John Kerry, so let's have him on and give his expert analysis. And that is, well, they'll remember how to make these bombs, and so I guess we should have just let him do it. We've got traffic coming up in a moment, and then we'll also revisit, since CNN is utilizing John Kerry as a credible source on dealing with things in the Middle East, a previous assessment that he made when it came to Trump and the attempt to get countries to go around the Palestinians and sign Abraham Accords with Israel. Liz had the following to say about our good friend Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. She's amazing to work with as a first-time home buyer trying to navigate a complex and fast-paced market. Emily did a wonderful job in helping us find the perfect home, stay positive, even in very competitive seller's market. She was professional, knowledgeable, did not pressure us to look at houses that would not work or go over our budget. We absolutely plan on working with her again if we ever need a realtor. Cannot recommend her enough. Consistent with what you got when it comes to people, their responses, their experiences. And the only, I wouldn't say downside, but, the Liz noting here that this was her first time as a home buyer. You almost don't really know how good you have it with Emily Johnson until you've had someone else. It's like having a kind of semi-okay boyfriend or girlfriend, but then you really get a good one. You're like, wow, if I hadn't gone through that bad relationship before, I wouldn't know how good I have it. So Emily being the first time, you're very, very lucky, very fortunate that is your first time experience. Home buying, home selling, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 91 and heat index values as high as 100. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91, and looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 88.
Former Secretary of State and climate change czar, whatever his title was, John Kerry, was brought on CNN as an expert when it comes to the Middle East. And his expert analysis is that essentially we shouldn't get too excited about taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities because they'll just remember how to make them. So they can just rebuild them because they'll remember how. You don't bomb away their knowledge. Well, sometimes you can, depending on what scientists you take out. But again, if that's the argument, then there's no point in militarily taking out bridges, taking out any infrastructure, in anything, shooting down fighter jets because, well, somebody knows how to make new ones. But that's the brilliant analysis of John Kerry, and that sort of understanding of things in the Middle East is why it is that he is still brought on networks like CNN as an expert. And I played the audio earlier, but he utilizes his expertise in the Middle East as credibility for his assessment here. And this is a guy that, like so many people, frankly, their approach has been wrong in the Middle East. I mean, it's just, they're so dumb. After Trump became president in his first term, and it's just one rite of passage, you got to try to crack that Middle East problem. And so he gave the Palestinians a chance. Sort of like this time around, he's given the Syrians a chance, saying, okay, you got a chance here. He believes in that. And they would not sign on to the peace accords with Israel. And so Trump said, and this is where he differs, well, let's try something different instead of just trying the same thing over and over again. See, that's not how you... See, experts know. You just try the same approach over and over and over again, and you pat yourself on the back for really keeping with it. Give yourself awards. Go to the cocktail parties. Got all the stories to tell. Trump said, no, you know what we're going to do? We're going to try this thing called the Abraham Accords, in which we will try to create peace in the Middle East by going to different countries in the Arab world and having direct relations with Israel. And John Kerry was asked about this new approach at the time.
There will be no separate peace between Israel and the Arab world. I want to make that very clear to all of you. I've heard several prominent politicians in Israel sometimes saying, well, the Arab world's in a different place now. We just have to reach out to them and we can work some things with the Arab world and we'll deal with the Palestinians. No, 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 and no. I can tell you that, reaffirmed even in the last week as I have talked to leaders of the Arab community. There will be no advance and separate peace with the Arab world without the Palestinian process and Palestinian peace. Everybody needs to understand that. That is a hard reality.
Well, it turns out it wasn't so real, given that the Abraham Accords would be signed directly between Arab nations and Israel. You see, people like John Kerry are the problem. This arrogance, this belief that you are an expert, even though you fail over and over and over and over again. And you can understand, I know it's difficult for you and I to believe that. How can somebody convince themselves? What sort of mental illness must exist for a person to believe that they are really truly knowledgeable and hold an area of expertise in something that they have been part of in failing every step of the way? And part of it is because of the bubble they live in. And when you're still to this day, as he was just yesterday or the day before, invited on CNN to once again give his expert analysis on the Middle East, and once again he's, well, what Trump's doing is wrong here. You know, this isn't going to work. These cliches in life, people who don't know history doomed to repeat it, and it really is just throwaway bumper sticker slogans. Because these are people that repeat history over and over and over and over again with the exact same outcome, and then somebody like Trump comes along and says, maybe we shouldn't repeat history that has been proven to fail. And they're oh, you can't do that. That'll never work. Never work. Then it does. They never acknowledge it. Trump's still the guy that doesn't know what he's talking about. Trump's still the guy that is some sort of warmonger that's going to lead us to World War III. I mean, it really does show, both domestically and even internationally to some degree. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, people that are involved in these things, to a tremendous degree, actually don't care about succeeding. They truly don't care. Because if they did, they would say, as much as we hate Trump and think he's wrong on a lot of stuff, well, this worked. Specifically talking about the Abraham Accords. No interest in that whatsoever. None. Zero. Zero interest. No, instead, let's go back to funneling money to Iran so we can have that whole October 7th thing. That really worked out nicely, didn't it? By the way, John Kerry is the same guy, it was revealed. It was operating behind the scenes during the Trump administration to try and sabotage Trump's efforts to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. The Washington Times had reported President Trump in 2019 sought to open a back channel of communication with top Iranian officials and saw the UN General Assembly meeting in September as a potential opportunity to diffuse escalating tensions with Tehran, but the effort failed. 2 months earlier, however, a different back channel was thriving in New York. Iran's smooth English-speaking foreign minister Zarif met with Robert Malley, who was President Obama's Middle Eastern advisor, in an apparent bid to undermine the Trump team and lay the groundwork for post-Trump relations. And what would be revealed is that you had a number of individuals, and one, of course, again, was John Kerry, that were behind the scenes in these back channels telling the Iranians, don't worry about what Trump, he's going to be gone. Your buddies will be back in the White House again. We'll take care of you. And we saw how Biden did. I mean, all of this stuff, this isn't some sort of, I mean, this was revealed prior to, or maybe in the beginning of the Biden administration, but I think it was towards the end of the Trump administration when all of this was revealed. This isn't some new conspiracy theory. This isn't denied. The Washington Times, if I said Examiner, it's the Washington Times, noted that one of those that were trying to sabotage the Trump administration when it came to dealing with Iran was former Secretary of State John F. Kerry, who met with Zarif during the Trump years. So did Obama Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz. They, along with Mr. Malley, were top U.S. negotiators of the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. As part of that deal, Tehran pinky swore to limit its nuclear enrichment activities, which, of course, we know that they didn't do. So these are people, and you hear the word treason thrown around a lot. But when you have a president of the United States working in order to prevent nuclear development from the number one exporter of terrorism in the world, and you have people from the former administration going behind their backs secretly to those terrorists and saying, just hold on a few years, don't worry, your buddies will be back in charge. I don't know, that kind of seems like aid and comfort to the enemy. At one point also, and this isn't secret because there were some calls for John Kerry to resign at the time, but there were audio recordings released of him leaking military operations of the Israelis to the Iranians, in which Zarif was talking, and it was recorded, about how, John Kerry, he's letting me know what the Iranians are doing. Specifically noting that the Iranians had, according to John Kerry, what he told Zarif, that they had, taken military action against like 200 Iranian interests in Syria. So he's betraying Israel as well. For who? The number one exporter of terrorism in the world? This is who these people like. I mean, it really does go hand in hand with the anti-Semitism problem within the Democrat Party when you find out who it is that they betray on the world stage, which people they love to cozy up with. And all of this, of course, while they portray Trump as somehow being a lover of dictators. quite contrary to the truth. This is Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company, summer in the Midwest. It means sunshine and storms, and it's also the perfect time to get your roof in shape. Now, the Pyramid team, they know how brutal the weather can just be on your home, and if your roof is older, if it's damaged, or maybe it's just showing signs of wear and tear, summer is the time to act. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections. They use top quality materials and fast professional service, whether it is a minor repair or maybe a full roof replacement or even metal roofing services. The Pyramid Roofing Company team has got you covered. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out to your home this summer, make sure to schedule that free roof inspection with Josh and his team today. Now, you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
One of the criticisms that the Obama administration got from human rights groups, but it didn't get a tremendous amount of attention, was the reclassification of what classified as a civilian casualty. One of the things that the Bush administration and the war on terror was criticized for and accused of, and Obama was big on this, Democrats, like all these civilians. Okay, so, civilians and you're killing civilians, indiscriminately killing civilians. You need to stop that. And they basically created this standard that unless you absolutely 100% know for sure, they try to create this standard in the minds of the American people that is unacceptable to carry out any sort of launch, particularly with drones or any way, frankly, against a terrorist, unless you know for absolutely 100% sure every single person who is going to be killed in that attack is an actual terrorist. And of course, that's an impossible thing to do. Once Obama got elected, this created a new problem. How do we continue these operations while eliminating or at least vastly cutting back on the number of civilians that get killed? And their approach was, we just change the definition. So what would occur during the Bush years is if there was some sort of launch targeting terrorists, like there's a funeral or some sort of operation somewhere and there are terrorists there, and then they would use intelligence to determine how many of these people were actual terrorists. So let's say 20 people were taken out, and they determined that 15 of those people were terrorists, so that would get chalked up as 5 civilian deaths. The Obama administration flipped the standard. So essentially, any male and any adult was considered to be a potential terrorist, and you had to prove otherwise. And so what you would have is the exact same scenario, but because the Obama administration changed what qualified as a civilian count, it drastically dropped the civilian count of deaths because they just wouldn't count them. They'd be like, well, that's a 14-year-old boy, and we know that sometimes they're terrorists, and so that's how we're counting. Now, again, this wasn't anything secret. This is something that some human rights organizations were very critical of the Obama administration for doing. It's particularly humorous, you think about it, and this rewriting of history that we hear from the left when it comes to the Obama administration, and it popped up again yesterday during a panel discussion on CNN in which one of the Obama folks declared that Obama was just so anti-war. This guy was nothing but peace.
I mean, does it matter whether or not they actually were going to do this?
I think it does matter, very much so. And I would agree with Dr. West. As the world as it should be, we should not have nuclear weapons. I agree with you 100%. The world as it is, the President of the United States, I worked for an anti-war president, and I saw... No, he was. He ran against...
How many countries did you bomb the crap out of?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Lord have mercy.
No. Like you guys didn't just use bombs for diplomacy?
Do you want to put your scorecards up against each other?
I'm happy to put up scorecards.
You all are the...
On the Democrats and Republicans. You agree with that?
Now, of course, it was Scott Jennings in there noting that Obama was the king of drones. And a lot of that was because of the advancing of technology and the ability and using the drones and acquiring expertise in using them. And it made it a lot easier to kill people. And he took advantage of that. I mean, this is a guy that also had a kill list, which included American citizens that he was provided once a week. And he would decide without people even being charged with the crime if they were a danger to the United States, and then we would take them out. And we did that. And so this rewriting of history that you see on networks like CNN, he was the anti-war president. What total BS. Ever wonder what it could look like, what it would take for you to make some of your outdoor living space an actual living space that can accommodate your own little peaceful serenity, or a dinner? You want to have outdoor dinner and just really do it absolutely right and make that investment. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. You can visit hunterhardscapes.com, whether it is just that simple outdoor living space design, paver patios, retaining walls, sod installation, garden bed construction. A lot of people want to get into the gardening thing, but you're like, I don't want it to look like, I did it. They can handle that for you as well. You can see some of the projects that they've done before and after, and a price estimation calculator as well. Give you kind of a ballpark idea at hunterhardscapes.com, also at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Now, for those of you who feel like we don't get things done and taken care of in Missouri, and you're upset and frustrated because meaningful tax reform hasn't occurred, and the elimination of the income taxes haven't happened yet, fear not, because things are being done. Japanese honeysuckle, calorie pears, and other non-native plants can be a nuisance in your garden, and they could soon become illegal in Missouri. Whew. Lawmakers approved a bill aimed at combating the spread of several non-native species by requiring plant sellers to submit an affidavit promising not to sell any. This includes perennial mint, any variety of Sericea lespedeza, any variety of Japanese honeysuckle, any variety of Callery pear, and coloratus variety of climbing Euonymus. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not that into plants, which is why I leave it to experts to tell me which I can and cannot have. Government here to help.